the pie. Conquer fears, won't let them reside. Heartbeats pound as we take the dive. Living now feels so alive. Heart steel veins glowing bright. Fitness gone in the dead of night. Dating game, we got the sight. Crushing finance, career out of sight. Man up now, we own it true. Breaking change, just me and you. Success stories everywhere. Living life beyond compare.
Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a fantastic talk. As always, I love diving into these types of things. It's funny, dude, Kevin, when I'm like looking at that footage in that intro video, I saw Brad there again because we're having Brad and Jake on in a couple weeks, which is going to be a fantastic discussion. They just started a podcast called Practically Famous, and they actually just released another episode of that today, which is it was really interesting talking about authenticity and connecting with people. That's something that I think everybody can develop that skill a little bit better. And they had great stories to go along with it. So Practically Famous, if you guys want to go look them up, and then look out for in 2 weeks here, we're going to be doing an interview with them. And that's going to be a lot of fun. But today's topic, art is not life. And Kevin, you brought this one up. This was your idea talking about it, and I want your thoughts on this.
Yeah, man. I was recently down south with my parents. If you don't know, my parents my mom and stepdad, they live in the Villages, which is about 45 minutes north of Orlando. It's the largest 55 and older community in the United States. It's a very special place. It's when you hear that, you think old folks home, but it's nothing like that. There's 15 9-hole golf courses, I think 3 or 4 executive. Arnold Palmer has a course there, Nancy Lopez. They got town squares with bars, restaurants, and they have live entertainment every night at one of the 3 or all of the 3 from 5 to 9. And it's a very special place. However, it's for people that have worked their entire life to try to save up enough money to retire and then get to live in a place like that. And it's a great place, but it made me think, that especially here in the West, in America, we are brought up from day one that work is life. Everything revolves around your job and your job to pay your bills of stuff that you borrowed money from a bank that you have to pay back. That's why losing a job for most Americans, especially men, is a life-changing event when it shouldn't be. A lot of other countries out there, Sweden especially, even if you work, your employer has to give you so much time off, so much paid time off. So that way you still have a life outside of work. And that's something that we don't really have here in America. And I was reading a article the other day, and it's considered a conspiracy. However, Rockefeller and the men that built America, Carnegie, Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, these guys in the early 1900s were basically the Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos of the day. However, they had a lot more clout back then. And I was reading an article about how Rockefeller used his opulence, used his money to basically manipulate the public school system, because he knew for his companies to be successful, he had to have workers. He had to have employees. He had to have labor that could fulfill the needs that his company provided. So in his infinite wisdom, he used his donations and his millions of dollars that he donated to the public school system to basically create employees. And the way he did this is because, you went to school, I went to school. Any manufacturing job, when it's time to go to work, what happens? A whistle goes off. Woo, time to get to work. Okay, so from kindergarten to 12th grade, when it's time to go to class, what happens? A bell goes off. Okay, and you go and you sit in rows and you listen to the teacher talk and you memorize what they think you're supposed to learn to take the test to pass. There's no free thinking. There's no collaboration. There was no innovation. It was a standardized way of learning. And it was a way of learning to be an employee, to be a sheep for Carnegie, Henry Ford, these guys that needed workers. And a lot of people will look at that as conspiracy. However, it makes a lot of sense. And if you've ever seen the series, I think it was on History Channel, The Men Who Built America. It's a 5-part miniseries. It's a great series. It will show you how they rose to the basically kings of the time by using basically ruthless tactics to get to where they were. And they didn't want competition. That's why things have turned out the way they are. And boomers, like my parents, your parents, they were the biggest victims of this type of indoctrination, because what happened growing up, if anything bad happened, we're going to lose the house, we're going to lose the job. And it was a life-changing end of life event that if something like that happened. And I'm 46 right now, and I'm starting to look at life that, because I was a victim of it as well. I took out my first loan. Actually, my dad took out my first loan for me because I was too young to take out a loan to buy my second car at the age of 16. So I had to work at the age of 16. Well, I've been working since I was 15, a normal job, all the way up until now. But that's the way it was supposed to be. If you want something, you borrow the money, then you get a job and you pay it back with interest. And that mentality has stuck with so many people that work is life. Everything revolves around your career, especially for men in this day and age. That hasn't changed. You have a few outliers out there that actually go on and create their own businesses and are free thinkers. But even college now is about indoctrination, not innovation. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because it's a cycle that needs to be broken. Men need to start thinking for themselves. And when we say work is not life, hobbies are important. When I say hobbies, I don't mean golf. I don't mean shooting pool. Yeah, no, those things are great, but we got to stop looking at those things as hobbies, because those are basically leisure activities. And those are something that we do when we're not at work. On the 2 days off a week we get, we try to go play golf, or we try to go shoot some pool. And we look at those as hobbies. However, if you start looking at hobbies of something that's bettering yourself, that's helping you grow as a man, then you can start looking at it different.
No, it's a really great point, and it's interesting. I've been going through this a lot, and it's funny that you brought this topic up to me, because this is exactly what I was talking to my buddy about, especially with all the stock market stuff that's going on, all the international deals, and Trump just signed another deal today with Saudi Arabia. He had that agreement with China on Sunday, and it's really interesting, because I'm starting to see what life is like in the big picture instead of in the narrow scope that's kind of, as you said, indoctrinated in us of how everything is supposed to be. Like, you follow the media, you follow what you're being told to do, and you become like a robot to society. And that's not what it's supposed to be. And I started to see it more over the past few years, mainly because I started working for companies that were more international, where I mean, I guess the first time was way back when I worked for a company where our partners were out of France, and they would take their 3 week or 1 month vacations every summer.
Mhm.
And that to me is so foreign. And it still kind of is. And I'm still trying to adjust to understand that work life balance because it is so drilled into us as Americans that it's work, work, work. Like you have to do this and you don't take your vacation days. And then they got rid of carryover in a lot of companies of those vacation days. So it's like use it or lose it. And then you're forced to use it at the end of the year when nobody's really doing too much and it's cold. So you can't even take a great vacation. And it's just, we're just in this endless cycle. And so starting to have some of that freedom and trying to take capture again of what life is supposed to be. I know one of the things, as you can see here with the Legos, as I continue to unpack, I still got so many different boxes I gotta break apart. But I'm having fun resetting up a lot of the displays and whatnot. For me, that's a great way of kind of spending the time doing that, not as a leisure activity, as you kind of phrased it, but instead like a creative activity. And I was talking to Brad and Jake last night when we were kind of planning out that interview we're going to be doing 2 weeks from now. When we were talking about it, I can now like freehand this stuff. So if somebody throws a like, so that's the Frozen Castle right there. We got the Daily Bugle, and this is a bakery. Got a whole bunch of different characters. Got the Flintstones down there. I might as well like zoom in on it just so you guys can all see kind of things I'm working on. They got Happy Friends here from the uh, uh, Adult Swim show. I got Iron Giant back there, and he's actually holding Tigger, but again, you can't really see. I'm still setting up the studio. Then you got the Steamboat Willie there. A lot of fun things like this. I can do that however I want to now. And the reason why I can is because I've given myself the time and space to explore those types of things instead of just sitting around being so stressed about go to work, come home, go to work, go home. I work from home now. And I have this excess time now because I work from home. I don't have that commute anymore. The job that I used to have, I was driving an hour and a half to and from work each and every single day. For what?
Mhm.
Like I was getting paid less at that job than I am at the current job. Like at what point do we start thinking like what is valuable in life? To me, what's valuable in life is actually enjoying it. We are human beings, not human doings. I love that phrase because it's the truth. We are meant to be. I had shared with the group not too long ago, I think it was over the weekend, the documentary that they did on Office Space and kind of talking about how tribes in the past essentially functioned. They would essentially max out at around 150 people, and everybody was free to move to different tribes whenever they wanted to, and nobody was required to work. Did you ever hear about that
No,
concept?
no, that's something new to me. I will definitely check it out though.
Yeah, so it's super fascinating because the way that we became to be human beings is that we only worked maybe 2 to 4 hours, 2 to 3 hours a day. That's it.
Mhm.
And most of the time, work was elective. Everybody just kind of let everybody do their own thing, but we all had a shared mission for the tribe that we were a part of. I don't know where that got lost. I understand the purpose of trying to increase productivity and trying to increase what is possible, but we didn't translate that alongside mental well-being because we actually saw that as we increase the productivity, the actual mental well-being of people has been going down. So even though we're doing productivity increases, like more money, more money, more money, well, what really is money? Money is just an exchange for freedom. It's supposed to be an exchange of value, but we dropped that back in what, like 1971 with when we dropped the gold standard. So
Mhm.
it's not truly a one-to-one pairing of value, but it's really just an exchange for freedom. And so we're demanding more for less freedom nowadays when that's not how we are inherently built to be. And so once I kind of like adapted that mindset where work is not life, like I enjoy my work, I enjoy what I do, but it's not life. life is the things that I enjoy that bring me to the highest level that I can be. Streaming with you right now,
Mhm.
having the Men of Now community, having fun with my Legos and being creative, doing that type of stuff. That's what makes me happy. That's life to me. And
Yeah.
then work is a means to an end. It's an exchange for freedom, not an exchange for value, as it's kind of pushed down on us that it's supposed to be.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's so true. And if you grew up like I did, very blue collar, wouldn't even say we were middle class growing up. My parents both worked. My mom worked for the school board. My dad worked at a chemical plant, and they hated their jobs. They hated it. I mean, they came home. My mom, not so much, but she never advanced. There was never any upper mobility for her. But my dad, I can remember before he was working at the chemical plant, he was driving truck. And I remember one time he had a delivery route and the company went out of business. And it was very sudden, very out of the blue. But I remember my dad coming home, and I was a little guy, man. I was maybe 12, 10 or around that age, and telling my mom that he was laid off. And instantly my mom started crying. My dad, I could see it in his eyes. I can still remember that, it was a blow to his not only ego, but then he's worried about how we're going to, the old saying, we're going to lose the goddamn house, and it just by losing the job, it shouldn't be that detrimental to your state of mind, your well-being. Or my mom was bawling. My dad's was very stressed out, all because the company went out of business that he worked for went out of business. And that's what, going back to what I was originally talking about of, being indoctrinated to be an employee, to be the labor for other companies. That's why it was such a blow to the family, but I can remember just thinking, because when you're young, you don't really understand what's going on. But
Right.
to see just a small event like that, how it affected my parents, I can even remember then I'm like, wow, that shouldn't be like that. Now, I'm not saying, life is going to be fairy dust and rainbows. I mean, yes, we do have to generate some income because living's not free. However, we don't need to get ourselves into a position, especially as men, that for something out of our control, my dad had no control over that company going out of business, no say in what happened with that. But as employees and as having, work is life, we set ourselves up for those types of downfalls. And,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that, we can't have the things we want. But, there was a movie in the late 90s called Fight Club. I'm sure you've seen it. Brad Pitt, Ed Norton, great movie. But that movie was such a bigger message than just guy that was, little off his rocker, had an imaginary
Because
friend that
like
he
right
called
in the
with.
very beginning, right? Right in the very beginning, he's like looking around his apartment and it's like populating the different things from the catalog of him to buy. And
Mhm.
then when he kind of breaks free from that, he lives in absolute squalor.
But he's happier,
He's
and
happier.
he's more free. And there's a line that Tyler Durden says in that movie there's so many that he says that pushed the real message of that movie. It had nothing to do with fighting, but he said, we work jobs that we hate to buy shit that we don't need. And that's, a lot of us do that. And then we get ourselves in a position where we have to depend on an employer or a company to pay that stuff off. And, that I get it. I'm a realist that, yeah, sometimes we have to borrow money, but we also don't have to get ourselves in that position that if we lose our job, our wife starts crying, our ego is blasted, and we don't know what to do. We might lose the house. We might lose this, that, and the other. And that's why it's so important to have hobbies. And when I say hobbies, I mean stuff that you can fall back on, stuff that can actually generate money for yourself and not have to just depend on that work. Wake up, go to work, come home, go to sleep, cycle, and rinse and repeat. And we all get stuck in that at some point. And what brought this on for me is, being around a bunch of people that are retired. I'm looking at these people, and, anywhere from, 60 to 80 years old is the average. And I'm looking around these people, and they're having a good time at this point in their life because they've worked and now they've retired. But I think, is that all we're going to do? Is we just work our asses off just to enjoy a few years in our twilight years? And it's been so ingrained in us that, we think that's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm not saying it's completely wrong. I mean, work your ass off, have good work ethic. I got it. But don't make your life define you as a man by your job that you work for somebody else.
Yeah. I don't think that life should be about work. I don't think life should be about money. Life is about enjoying what is important to you. I mean, that's the journey that I think everybody has to go through. And it was interesting because we were having a conversation last night on this. Is like, when I think about my parents and like their mindset is the exact mindset you were talking about. And that's the mindset of like, this is what I was supposed to do, but they never reached the point of self-actualization. You've heard that term before, right? Self-actualization.
I don't think I have. No. Explain that a
Yeah.
little more.
So essentially, like, understanding like who you actually are, what you're actually meant to do, what you actually enjoy, like actually finding yourself. Because my dad, he was an accountant, or he got an accounting degree, and he was that type of person where it was just work, work, work. If he lost his job, it would be absolute turmoil for the family. And I just remember like growing up, like I never really got those times to really connect with him because he never really connected with himself. One of the most powerful moments I ever experienced with him was when I did actually move back home with him, and both his youngest brother, or no, his middle brother. So his younger brother, he's the oldest of three. His middle brother had passed away, as well as his father. And that was the last grandparent I had. He was the only one that was really alive while I was coherent. The other ones died when I was like 1 year old. And it affected him a lot. And I remember having a discussion with him and really pressing him at one point. And it was like, the issue is that, Dad, you've never dealt with this. You've never like dealt with the emotions. And it ended up becoming a very emotional conversation. He broke down in tears. And that's one thing that I think was interesting. And it's not like I was trying to be mean or anything. I just was trying to get him to see that there's more to life, and we can't just be stuck in what we expect. Because what we're taught essentially growing up is everything's going to be fine. If you fall in line, then everything's going to be good. But that's not how life works. Things change, things shift. And if we don't have that unique sense of self, and we're not leaning into who we're actually meant to be, then we're never going to be fully stable. Because my dad has put on a mask almost his entire life. And that was one of the first times I was able to crack his mask and actually get him to see himself in a mirror. I know it's a little bit different than maybe the exact trajectory you were trying to take with this, but I think that's so important, is that I just look at growing up, and there were so many times where he wasn't there. And what I mean by not being there, and he used to argue with me about this a lot. Well, I was your soccer coach. I was your baseball coach. And I'm like, yeah, but you weren't there. Mm-hmm. You weren't present. And I think being present in life is how you become happy. And that's where work is not life, I think is so important to that. Because we tend to make work life but that is not what it's all about. It's about being present. It's about enjoying and living our true selves, as well as enjoying and experiencing life with those that we care about. But if we get blinded, I mean, hell, I wasn't able to have the mature type of conversations that I can have with somebody like you until my dad was almost reaching retirement. And even now, we're still kind of at odds on certain things because he's
Yeah.
not able to break down that mask, that shield of everything that he's always known is actually a lie. And fortunately, and I'm so happy for him, that they're down in South Carolina and they got a retirement home there and they go boating and they've got their golf club and he's actually gotten involved. My dad is also a men's self-help coach himself, except for children. He helps children in the area and whatnot, and he really gets a lot of fulfillment out of that. But he's doing what he was supposed to do as a father when I was that age, and it sucks. And I think that that's something that he's also kind of like working through internally because I really hope he understands what I'm saying about being present versus just being there. That's the difference. And I think a lot of people, when you think about work and what you're supposed to do in life, you end up just being there instead of actually being present. There's a huge difference in that.
Yeah, there is a difference. And like when you talk about having those conversations with your dad, um, sometimes, man, especially, I mean, there's a bond between a father and a son is very special, even though it might be rocky at times. Most guys closer with their mom. That's just dynamic, with just like daughters with dads. But sometimes I just had to come to the grips the fact that I'll never be able to have conversations like that with my dad because, for one, he doesn't want to face anything that he may have failed at growing up, which is fine. I understand that completely. He doesn't have to accept that. But I've just come to the realization that, that kind of connection I'll never have with my dad. But, one thing I noticed of when you have boomer parents like we both do, and they were victims of the indoctrination of how you're supposed to live your life is graduate high school, get a job, work your fucking ass off, save a little bit of money, and hopefully you can depend on Social Security and maybe a little bit of retirement that you put back, and maybe a pension if you're lucky enough to get it. And then that was life. And it's very, where it makes it really harmful is when your kids grow up and your kids get a little bit of free thinking, little bit of ambition, and bring up ideas, they only tear them down on why you can't start your own business, why that will never work, why you shouldn't even try to do something on your own.
Hallelujah. You're preaching to the choir right now.
What if you fail? And I can remember that, growing up and having ideas that I just finally just stopped sharing them with both my parents, and and kind of did what I was supposed to do. Joined the military, did that for several years, still doing that part-time. And once I left the military, got a job, a really good job with Lockheed Martin, which was great, but it still was the lock and step indoctrination of working for somebody else, that if it was taken away from me, I would, oh, what do I do now? Oh, the tears come, the ego's bruised, that kind of stuff. And I hate to bring this book up because we bring it up a lot, but if you haven't read it, anybody watching this, make it next on your list. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And what's great about that book is because the parents that he came from were college educated. I think they were both teachers, but they had the Rockefeller indoctrination. You're supposed to work, save a little bit of money, maybe you can retire. But then his best friend's dad was a business owner, owned several businesses, didn't go to college, had 50 employees from all of his businesses, and did whatever he wanted to do, and nobody ever got in his way. And that, he was so fortunate to have that kind of picture and that kind of experience growing up to see that it doesn't have to be the way your parents want it to be or your parents thought it was supposed to be. And and not making work your life. I mean, what is the saying? I work to live. I don't live to work. You know, I mean, yeah, those are great sayings, but a lot of people can't practice what they preach.
A lot of the sayings that they have around work, like if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Fucking bullshit. Get out of
Yeah,
here.
no,
Like
it's
I
work.
hate that type of stuff. And you're absolutely right with that. I do want to give a little shout out here, Bentley.
What's going
Reach
on,
out to me,
sir?
man. You got to reach out to us. I want to have you on again, and I want to talk to you. I miss you, man.
Yeah, definitely, man. You're still a founding member as far as I'm concerned, buddy. We need you. We need you
I
back.
view it the same way.
You know, but okay. Let's move into what I talk about hobbies. You know, and the way I look at hobbies. You know, we got the leisure activities, golf, fishing, that kind of stuff. I mean, and yeah, those are hobbies. Don't get me wrong, they are. But if you start looking at hobbies as something that improves yourself, improves your life in a way, you know, there's some basic essential skills that all men need. You know, basic hand tools, knowing how to read a tape measure, you know, learn the difference between 5/8 and half an inch, you know.
Oh, dude, I just have to say, I want you to keep going. It was so funny the other day because I'm gonna get a rug and I'm redoing our bedroom here, and I was like whipping out like the tape measure and whatnot and doing all this type of stuff, and like Holland is like, oh, like what, like yes, and like doing everything. So yes, that is a skill every man needs to understand how to do and how to line things up appropriately, so that when you make a purchase, you don't mess things up. All right,
Yeah,
go
or
on.
you don't have to pay somebody else to install, you know, whatever you bought. You can do it yourself, you know. And if you don't have a dad to teach you, or you don't want your dad to teach you because it usually ends up him yelling at you and telling you how fucking stupid you are, I get it. There's videos on YouTube that makes everybody an expert nowadays. But things like that, you know, learning how to, you know, find something at a thrift store, fix it up a little bit, and resell it on Facebook Marketplace and make $50 on it. That's a great hobby that you can learn to do. Or learn how to build something that you enjoy, you know, that you enjoy building. One thing that I always wanted to start is building stand-up paddle boards, and not the inflatable ones that they have now, but getting the balsa wood shipped in from Australia, actually shaping it, probably take, you know, 6 weeks to make one. But something like that I'd love doing, because I start with this pile of 9-foot boards of balsa wood and I shape it into a stand-up paddle board that I can sell, use, give away, whatever. But it's something that I'm doing that's creating something. And to me, those are what men should start looking at as hobbies rather than leisure activities. You know, other things too. You know, something all men should know: basic firearm skills. You know, learn how to use a pistol, learn how to use a rifle, learn the difference between the two. Just basic stuff like that is stuff that will only help you later on down the road, whether you have to defend yourself, or if you're ever at a friend's house and you don't look like a complete idiot when they pull out a pistol, and you actually know how to charge the handle, you actually know how to load it, unload it, you know, and stuff like that. Those, to me, those are essential things that men should know, and should strive to want to know. And unfortunately, you don't see that often anymore. Is men that actually wanting to learn something that's gonna, you know, improve their knowledge, their skill base, their mindset later on down.
Dude, I'm so happy that you picked up that gun the right way. I can't tell you how many times that people don't understand where your finger needs to be. And like so many people
Even though
put
the
it right
safety's
in
on,
here.
it's you know,
Exactly. Dude, it drives me insane when I see that crap. Like, especially when I go to gun shows. There, you still get a bunch of idiots. It's just a safety thing. I don't know. It irks me for some reason. But
yeah,
that,
you know, but I mean, if it's something that interests you, you can find a local range close to your house. I'm sure there's one, whether it be indoor, outdoor, and find out when they're given the next basic safety classes and go learn about that stuff and immerse yourself in those type of hobbies, rather than, just playing golf or, what fishing. I mean, those are great things, but I look at those as leisure activities. Those are not hobbies. And
Mhm.
learning something else that, it continuously keeps your mind going, that's really good for a man's mental health. I do believe. I'll never not believe that continuously bettering yourself and learning new things, even well into your 40s, 50s, 60s, is only going to help your mental state. So that way you don't have to just rely on your job to keep you occupied.
No, that's a good point. And, just kind of leaning into that, like with, you don't necessarily need to make every little hobby like something that you do like permanently. Like for me, firearms are like here and there. It's something that I enjoy. I know I've shared with you before. I've got the Golden Desert Eagle. I love that thing. I spent like $2,500 on it, and it's a pride and joy, and I love shooting it. And that, but for me, firearms is like a here and there type of thing. But at the same time, I'm able to connect with people based on that. Now, when I talk like Legos and whatnot, when I got back into that, that allowed me to activate a part of the creative brain that I had not had for a long time. Now, on Mother's Day, on Sunday, I was out with my girlfriend's family, and we started talking because they love traveling, and so we started talking about Matoria. I don't know if you've ever heard of Matoria, but Matoria is a monk village out in Greece. When you're in, I believe when you're in Athens, it's like a 3.5 hour bus ride or car ride or whatever to get there, and it's actually at the top of a mountain. It's like it's built on these like it's really I'll have to find a photo for you guys. But it's really interesting. And so I used to paint back in the day. And so I actually have a painting of a rock that they have there called the Elephant Rock. And so I did like an abstract version of it, and it's actually really beautiful. I will have to share that with you, and with the group, because it thing's gorgeous. And then I've also done like an etching to do a print of things. And I used to do all that type of stuff when I was younger. But then I went to school, and then I went into the workforce, and I stopped doing the creative things. And I didn't realize I was slowly dying inside. And it wasn't until I started doing the streaming again, it wasn't until I started connecting with other great men like you that I started to reignite who I really was on the inside. And when you ignite that, even if it is like small little things, well, now you got a tool belt. There's so many random things that I know or I can jump into that it just makes me adaptable to any circumstance. And I think that that's really what, you can have your core hobbies, but even just trying something out, like, dude, what you're saying with just like a firearm safety class, oh my God, you go ahead and do that. You can meet people locally that you could hang out with, especially if you're somebody who feels isolated and doesn't have that many friends. Because as we get older, as men, we tend to have less friends.
Mhm.
Boom, something that simple opens up doors where, hey, you want to go out and grab a drink, or you want to go grab a bite to eat, or you want to go do this, dude. Like, it's fucking amazing. Like where I'm living right now, right across the way, is a couple that we went out to. They took us to this interesting little bar where it's like a coffee slash bar type of place, and they were fantastic people. We had so much fun talking with one another. And like the dude hit me up the other week. We had our monthly meeting on Sunday, so I wasn't able to go, but he had invited me to go out to a movie with them. And I was like all for it. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Like these opportunities would not have opened up if I'm not open to experiencing more. And then the more you experience, the more you can adapt to any situation that presents itself in front of you. So that and it helps just not in your natural life, but also in your work life. Like being able to connect with people is so important, but we tend to silo ourselves and we become ants in a line.
Mhm.
Don't be ants in a line.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and it's easy to say that, but, it's to accomplish that is a harder thing for a lot of men. And I'm going to bring up something too. I mean, we've done several shows, one a long time ago, when we talked about divorce. They say in America it's like 50%. I think it's more than that now. 3 out of 5 marriages end in divorce. And we talked about how 80% of women are the ones that initiate divorce, because a lot of us men, once we get married, we stop trying. And when I say we stop trying, I don't mean we stop trying with her, but we got our job, we've got our dinner when we come home, and we've got our bed. So we get wrapped up in that cycle, and we become less interesting. We become not interesting at all, because we don't really have anything else going on. And there's no longer a mystique about us. We're no longer captivating in her eyes. So she gets bored. Women get bored real quick, man. And that's just a trait. You can't even fault them for that. But as men, if we're not constantly, but trying new things, learning new things, having new hobbies outside of work and home, it makes us a little bit more interesting to our woman, and it keeps him captivating. I don't say that just go out and try different things so you can impress women, but if you have other things going on in your life other than just work, like most of us do, work and home and maybe the gym, then you are a little bit more, or a lot more interesting than the guy that just goes to work, comes home, drinks 4 Bud Lights, goes to bed, rinse and repeat. And on Saturdays, he cuts the grass. So, I mean, little things like that is
I
not
don't know,
only
man.
good for
4, that's rookie numbers.
What's that?
I said 4, that's rookie numbers.
Oh, well, what, 6,
No, but you're 100% true. And like, that's one of the stories that I love to share. Like, when I met my girl, one of the reasons, like, one of the first things I share with her, and actually I was in test mode at that point, because I was going on a lot of different dates. I was on test mode of what worked, what didn't work. And I brought up to her that I was playing this Korean video game, and I had been playing it competitively for like 7 years. And after we slept together and we're laying there afterwards, I asked the question. I said, "What was the moment that you knew you were going to sleep with me?" And she said, "It was how passionately you spoke about this game." And I was just like, "Wait, what?" And it's like one of those random things, but it's like, because I'm so well versed in the world, that's what gives me character. That's what gives me flavor. And I think that we as men, we can fall to that, where we don't actually have any passions. When I look at my father, the only thing that he had ever was golf. But my dad did not join a golf league until he had enough money to join a golf league at the very end of his life. It's like 55 years old. So he spent his entire life as a slave horse for him finally to get it. And like, got to give kudos to him. He's in fantastic shape. He has stayed in fantastic shape. And he's killed it. So he's able to enjoy that. But most people wait to that point in time for them to really actually enjoy who they truly are.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times too, it's too late to figure that out, because you just look back and was like, well, if I was younger, I would get into jujitsu. If I was younger, I would try something, similar to that, but I coulda, woulda, shoulda, but like you were saying, and like I was saying, having things that will make you more interesting, not just for your own mental health, but most of us don't like our jobs. Most of us don't really enjoy talking about our jobs. So if we're only work, sleep, work is life, then what's going to make you any different from the next guy? What's going to make you more interesting? What's going to make you a better man? If you hate your job, but that's all you really have going for you in life, and you've made work life, then you got to really look in the mirror and say, well, shit, what defines me. And if you make work a priority, which is, I mean, it is a priority, don't get me wrong, but the number one priority of everything revolves around work, and you hate that job, then nobody's going to want to be around you. You're not going to have anything to offer anybody else. And not just
Dude,
women,
how many
but
times, dude, how many times have you spoken to somebody and that conversation, like that's like always the icebreaker? Oh, what do you do? And then you guys like kind of talk like it's like when there's like a couples meetup or something and it's like there's no substance and it's just fucking boring. And it's like it makes you realize how much you hate yourself at the same time. If you got no flavor to even talk about.
yeah, yeah. Or the only flavor you have to talk about is to bitch about the job you hate. You know,
Right.
you know, and sometimes it's good to vent, but the person you're venting to don't want to hear that shit. I know I don't. You know, I don't like negativity. You know, other things like Bentley, here's here watching. You know, when he had embraced masculinity for like 2 or 3 shows, he was rebuilding his motorcycle engine, taking it completely apart for his Harley Davidson and putting it back together and getting it running. I mean, that's something that a lot of men wouldn't even know where to start. They would have to go pay thousands of dollars to get somebody else to do it, but he knows how to do that. And while he was doing a show, was doing that on camera. And I thought that was super fucking cool, you know, and stuff like that makes you more inviting and more interesting as a man. And that's why I say having hobbies rather than just leisure activities is very important, not only for looking cool or doing cool things, but for your own self mental health and self gratification of accomplishing something outside of the norm of just your career. Nobody really cares if you just got promoted at work. Nobody really cares if you hate your job. Nobody really cares if you love your job. However, if you've got other things going on in your life that not only bring you happiness, make you an interesting person to be around, to talk with, and maybe even show somebody else the things you do, that's really what it takes to be a well-rounded man, I believe.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And going in on this further, Bentley, I love this comment. So we move into our evolutionary role of providing and protecting, which makes us boring. Men will sacrifice our happiness to P&P for our family. Women will sacrifice their family for their happiness. Now, don't like the negativity at the end of that. That is somewhat true, but that's not going to be the focus of kind of what I talk about with this. I don't believe that. I believe that what we create, it's not to provide and protect, but it's what we create. I believe that what we create is what gives us fulfillment as men. We are builders. And so if we're able to create something and we're able to create something beautiful, that's what truly hits our soul. And so that's what I think gets lost when everybody goes ahead and just falls in line, ants in a line for whatever type of job or whatever they're doing in their world. And I mean, hell, dude, I just think back to like my mistakes in my relationships and how I completely kind of gave up on certain things just to make her happy, and it all blew up in my face. And that was one of the most beautiful things with my girl now, is that she leaned into the fire in my eye. And she had even said after the dinner that we had on Sunday, she's like, my dad's eyes just like lit up when you were talking with him. And he was just so excited because I was talking about Easter Island and I was talking about all these types of interesting things, especially about like Tesla and some of the technology that he had invented that they ended up destroying and why they went with Edison instead of his method. It's just fun. And I wouldn't know that stuff if I wasn't naturally who I am as a man. We are creators, we are explorers, and we're just trying to navigate this world. So lean into that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And Bentley, you are right. Yeah, women will sacrifice her family for her happiness. As negative it is yeah, it's very true, sir. But no, like you were saying, it is very important to have substance as a man. And like you said, we are innovators. We are thinkers. We are most of us, anyways, are problem solvers, or we want to be, at least. And when you indoctrinated by public school system where the bell rings, you go sit in line, you shut up and you listen, and then you memorize what they're saying or memorize what's in a book to take the test just to pass the course. And there is no debate, there is no conversation, there is no collaboration along with your fellow students plus the teacher. It takes that natural innovation, problem solving, it takes that away from a man. So it takes a part of a man's soul to do that. But then once you've got it ingrained in you, you think that's how it's supposed to be, and questioning it is wrong, then that's when you have the employees that hate their job, or you have the men that don't have a life other than work, because that's all they do. They go to work so they can pay the bills and bitch about their job, and then rinse and repeat on the couple days they have off. If they're not relaxing, they're cutting the grass, or they're cleaning the cars, or they're changing the oil. Nothing that's giving them more substance in life. And that's why I think it's very important for men to separate work from your life. And don't get me wrong, guys, I'm not saying, I mean, I wish we could all just sit back and not have to pay bills and, you know, work for somebody else. We can't all start businesses. We all can't do our own thing. But if you start finding a balance, and I know that's a broad term, but separating yourself, getting yourself in a financial position where you don't 100% depend on that job, so that if you lose that job, the world's in. You're going to lose the goddamn house. The cars are going to get repoed. Get yourself in a position where work is there and you're doing it because you want to and you need to, but you don't have to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I could totally take this down a completely different direction, but that's going to require an entirely different show. And I'm not going to share. I'll share with you behind the scenes, but I don't want to hint at anything. But I think we could have a really fun show about that, because there's a lot of very successful and very smart people. Yeah, there's a lot of very smart and successful people that have figured out a way to make life work without having to rely on money, because money is no longer a one-to-one pair of value. It's just an exchange for freedom. But
I agree with that. You can't live without it, you know. But it's like I said, man, I had epiphany the last week, being down there with my parents and seeing what was going on, and it's just, you know, it just made me think. And of course, you know, the current situation that I'm in, you know, professionally making some changes, and it struck me that I wanted to talk about this. And, you know, there's so many other things that, I mean, we can always continue this show too. But right now I'm wiped out, you know, being on the road for, you know, 8.5 hours. So let's get your final thoughts on work is life and how hobbies are important for men.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with this entire thing, I think I've said it a lot, and it's very interesting how, gosh, like back, they don't teach you how money works. They don't teach you how jobs work. They don't teach you how taxes work. They don't teach you about anything growing up. And that's what I was talking to my buddy about earlier today. I was like, dude, like my degree is worthless because I've learned everything from after the fact. And what I found is that through this entire experience, just tapping back into who I really am as a person, again, like the creative side, things like this, it just brings me peace. And it also allows me to explore a lot more. Whereas I didn't really have that when I was honed in and being told, like, you got to work. It's like the clock, like Dolly Parton 9 to 5. That's how it kind of fucking felt. And it was pretty ridiculous. And moving through different work cultures, and then also meeting different people, and then exploring some of my old hobbies as well as stepping into some new ones. I mean, heck, even since my original days, like going skydiving, getting into firearms, I did painting back in the day. I did sculpting back in the day. I did Lego designs, which now I'm stepping back into again. Like a lot of these random things, like writing as well. Like I know I've mentioned before, like I'm a published author, and I don't mean like self-published, even though I am self-published. I'm a published academic author. So accomplishing all these small different things that kind of give me a well-rounded view of life. And it's not necessarily like that you do one thing and you got to stick to it. You can do one thing, become proficient, and then move on to something else, because that's how you learn what you're truly good at. And I think that's where people get caught, is because I know that they talk about, if we at least kind of look at it like the red pill lens, the red pill space or whatever, we look at it like, well, a girl who's constantly changing her mind must be borderline and there must be something wrong with her. No, there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. It's just how you express the change of mind. Like, what's the purpose behind it? And I think that that's something that guys really need to do to become the men that they're meant to be. The more that they experience, the variety of experience really helps them hone, if they're doing it the right way, helps them hone in on who they truly are and what truly makes them happy. So I think that that's something that's lost. It's very interesting, again, as I was saying at the very beginning of the show, working with companies that are international, where it's much more serious on taking that time off and taking it seriously. I mean, heck, I'm trying to handle that and juggle that right now with a lot of people that are taking 3 weeks at a time off. And for the first time in my life, I think I actually may be taking a 3-week vacation. And that's crazy to me. I feel guilty for taking time off from work. I shouldn't feel that way. That's not what life is supposed to be. We are not workhorses. That's not what it's meant to be. So it's just overall a very, very interesting topic. I got some ideas on how to dive deeper into it. If you guys are interested in either talking further about this, or if you have any further thoughts that you want us, or side topics on this that you want us to dive into, go ahead and comment that down below. That would be fantastic and help us lead kind of where the conversation goes. Or if you want to talk behind the paywall, definitely sign up for Men of Now down below. And I'm super excited for this show we're going to be doing in 2 weeks with Brad and Jake. That's going to be a lot of fun. I know you were with your family last night, so you didn't get to hear all of what we went into. But we ended up talking for like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. I love those guys. Brad's a good friend, and that's going to be a really, really special interview as we continue the Thrive in 25 series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look forward to that as well. They seem like stand-up guys, and they have the same plight and same mission we have. You know, building a network of, I hate the term like-minded, but building a network of men that we can rely on each other for advice, other networking, just a plethora of things that you don't get in the real world anymore. And that it's hard to find, and it's, the saying unplugged, you got to throw the topic into that. When you talk about unplugging from the matrix and unplugging from blue pill and red pill, all that bullshit. But this should be a part of your unplugging journey of not making work your life, especially if you don't like your job or you hate your job or you hate what you're doing. You need to set yourself up, and it's not something you can do overnight. I mean, yeah, you can quit your job, but many people are in a position where they can just quit their job. But if you're really not fulfilled with what you're doing to produce an income, then start making those changes, start making those steps to get to a place where you can be. And like you said earlier, yeah, that's fucking stupid saying of, well, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. No, guys, come on. That's just a cliche that was made up by somebody that didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. I mean, it's always going to be work. Even business owners business owners are some of the most unhappy people that I know, especially in the beginning.
Yeah,
because of
fucking
the
hate
grind that you got to put in, you know? So, I mean, it's always going to be work. It's not going to be something that, I mean, yeah, we'd all rather be on the beach in Tahiti rather than doing what we have to do to make money. But if you're completely unhappy where you're at, you need to start making those changes. And it's never too late to start making those changes, to start and figure out what maybe you would want to do, what maybe you would want to transition to give you your financial means to do the things that you want to do. And, you know, the time is now to start and figure out where you really want to be in 5 years. Where do you want to be in 10 years? And you can make those changes, and you don't have to quit your job to start something else. You know, it's a step-by-step process to stop making work your life and start making your life for your work. And that's, you know, I think that's important for us all to do. And that's part of unplugging. And that's part of breaking off from the herd and stop being an ant in a line, stop being a sheep in the field. Start owning your own future, owning your own life for your own mental well-being. And it's not going to be easy. It's not something that happens overnight, but if you start getting hobbies that will better you, better your knowledge, better your physical shape, better your whole life in general, then that's the best way to start making these changes, to get to a place in life where you don't hate your job, where you don't hate life, you don't hate, you know, you don't just have the go to work, come home, go to sleep mentality, and you start building something that where you have the balance that we were talking about earlier. And then you also start being proud of what you do instead of hating what you do.
Well said. Well said. Well,
Yeah, sorry, I
that's
rambled
what
a little
we
bit,
need, you
but
guys. Yeah,
I've been on the road today. I'm probably going to bed in the next 15 minutes, but
absolutely, dude. And I want to dive deeper into this in the future. But as I said, if you guys have specific avenues that you would like us to go down, or if you just need, because that's what Men of Now really is. It's setting up some of those boundaries and blockers for you to get to that goal. Defining your goal, figuring out your goal, and then getting you there and making sure you don't go astray. That's what we're all about here. And so this was a fantastic discussion. Kevin, I know we went way longer than we were planning to, but it was such a great discussion. And I'm looking forward to everything in the future. So until next time, guys, peace out.
Strong and wild, we rise up high, conquer fears, won't let them reside.